Hot topic for content creators. This is where I pitch a hot topic to you guys, and then you guys turn around, if you feel so inclined, and create your own content on said topic. The prompt for this topic is traditional publishing obsolete? That is the question that I pose to you guys. There was a writer's strike that went on earlier in the year at HarperCollins. I covered that during this segment. What else have I talked about? We've talked about the rise of the indie scene and what that means in terms of alleviating some of the stigma that used to surround the indie scene, and also kind of took a critical look at kind of the so-called prestige of traditional publishing. Do they still have the same prestige that they once held, maybe 10, 20 years ago? I do have a blog post prepared for you guys that I picked out because it comes from a famous traditionally published author. The reason why I picked this out is twofold. One, it has to do with the WGA strike that's going on right now. So the Writers Guild of America strike that's going on right now, but it also is coming from a traditionally published author. So it kind of dovetails those two subjects, and it's pertinent to this hot topic in that way. And also, I kind of skimmed the blog post a little bit, and he's sharing inside info from somebody who is deeply involved in the industry to a successful degree, might I add. Talk about going on strike. What do you think? He might be the one to talk about it, huh? And ask any booktuber who's a fan of the A Song of Ice and Fire. They'll tell you apparently George R.R.'s been on a strike for a while. Or at least a hiatus. He says, I want to say a few words about what I think is the most important issue in the current writer's strike, the so-called mini rooms that the Guild is hoping to abolish, and the terrible impact they are having on writers at the start of their careers. A look at my own career may be instructive. For the first 14 years of my career, I wrote only prose, a few novels, and lots of stories for Analog, Asimov's, and various other sci-fi magazines and anthologies. Much as I enjoyed television, I never dreamt of writing for it until 1985, when CBS decided to launch a new version of The Twilight Zone. And executive producer Phil DeGuire invited me to write an episode for them. Well, it must be nice, huh? Just gets an invite, just like that. A freelance script. That was how you began back then. I decided to give it a shot, and Phil and his team liked what I did. Now, I will say a little bit on that, because that's what the indie scene, I'm making a prediction right now, that's what the indie scene is going to become. Because like I say, I am interested in multiple facets of the indie scene, not just literature, okay? Not just, I'm starting to learn about the comic books. I gotta admit, I'm not a huge comic book guy. I'm learning, but I've never been huge into comic books. More of a literary guy, but I'm not just into literature. I like indie music too. So for those of you who followed me on Twitter or seen any of my Twitter posts, you'll know that I'm always sharing indie music. This type of shit that I like to listen to, but it's indie nonetheless. So I like indie music. I like indie literature, and I have aspirations to get involved in independent film as well. And that's a whole nother beast. That's a whole nother learning curve of creativity to go through to learn about how independent film works. But my prediction, like I was saying, my prediction right now is that that's what this whole indie scene is going to become. There are going to be the cream is going to kind of rise to the top. And as the cream rises to the top, that's going to have more access to resources. You know what I mean? Just in terms of being able to finance projects, get projects produced on kind of a professional level. Even if it's just because it's not mainstream doesn't mean that shit cannot be produced on a professional level, in the traditional sense of the word, and that may, the standard to which you build your brand on is really going to be dependent upon your access to resources and your finances and how much you're willing to invest in the project that way. However, like I said, the creams go rise to the top, and there's going to be all these different, when that happens, there's going to be all these different labels and new companies, indie companies out there, and indie productions, or producers, I should say, that will be able to kind of finance these projects. And they may be open to people who do screenplays, write screenplays and stuff like that, and may want to produce an indie film. And they have connections that they've already built up through their own networks, shit like that. That's the type of shit that I'm predicting right now. And how George is talking right now, where he's saying back in 1985, it was just, hey, some guy came out and invited him to write a script for the show. That's precisely how indie works. Literally. It's just individuals working with individuals. Someone may have read some of your novels and said, hey, I like how this guy writes narrative. I like how this, I like the prose in this work, maybe I'd like to adapt that into a film. And then you are getting approached. Suddenly you are getting approached by, people who have managed to make a name for themselves within the indie sphere, within the underground scene. There could be quite a bit of money flowing through the underground scene. You know what I mean? Just because it's underground, don't think that there ain't money out here. Trust me.